Welcome to Betting Weekly WTA, the women's tennis betting podcast brought to you in association with Bet Rivers. I'm Rory Jiwani. With me is Nigel Seeley to look forward to the second WTA 1000 tournament of the year in Dubai. Before we get started, please like and subscribe to us on YouTube and your podcast providers, and follow us on social media. The handle is @BecauseWeWin. Nigel, obviously, last week we went for Iga Swiatek in Qatar. We got the value, I think. I think she touched sort of minus 200 in running, or certainly minus 150. We had Arina Sabalenka, Coco Gauff going out early, but then she ran into Jelena Ostapenko, which she was on a good week. She reached the final, actually lost in the final to Amanda Anisimova. But I think we were a bit unlucky there last week, Nigel.
Well, I think good evening to you, Rory, and good evening to everybody watching this show. It will go down on one of those unlucky losers, and on my tombstone, I've said this for many years, it'll be Nigel Seeley got the value, done his money. That's what it'll say. I just think that we called it absolutely right. We looked at the market. We didn't like Sabalenka. We thought Iga Swiatek should be the favourite. Without a ball being served, Iga Swiatek become the favourite. She didn't play very well, actually.
No, she didn't.
She didn't play very well. And the warning signs were there from round one against Sakkari, but she did enough to get through. But I think we called it absolutely everything right. Anybody who bet the advice would probably like the argument. A lot of people who weren't going to have a bet would probably been swayed into the argument. And it just goes down to one of those real unlucky bets that you've got everything right for you, and then she runs into an opponent in Ostapenko, who has a tremendous record against her. She was 4-0 against her. And I think they got into Iga Swiatek's head. And Ostapenko knew that when she's on her game, she's fantastic. And, it was just one of them things. I think that we read the tournament right. We expected her to be bet, given her record in the tournament in Qatar. And she was. And unfortunately, she didn't just get over the line in the two matches that we needed to do so. So, yeah, there's it was just an unlucky bet. But I do that same bet 100 times again if the same thing was offered to me, and probably on 60 times we might get it right, or 50 odd times we might get it right. But it's this last week's made me think a little bit about the women's tour, and it's made me come with a little bit of a different strategy for this week in Dubai. But last week, just one of them weeks. I think we got everything right. Didn't work our way, but we dust ourselves down and we go again.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to hearing what your views are on the women's tour at the moment.
We could have a big podcast about that. We could have 2 hours about that if we want to have a conversation about that.
I mean, Ostapenko, since Wimbledon last year, she'd won 2 singles matches coming into the week in Doha. So, couldn't have backed her. Amanda Anisimova, pretty injury prone. We know she's talented, hits the ball hard. She went on to win the tournament. I think you'd have got very long odds on those two being the finalists. But there you go. That's part of the reason, well, certainly one of the reasons I enjoy and I love women's tennis is that it can be extremely unpredictable. You do try and pick the winners, but you do get surprises now and again. And which brings us nicely onto Dubai. Dubai is the one, it's the WTA 1000. It's usually the one that throws up the surprises. Doha usually goes to script. But Dubai last year, Jasmine Paolini beat Anna Kalinskaya in the final. 2023, it was Barbara Krejcikova. She beat Iga Swiatek. Amazingly, neither Swiatek nor Coco Gauff nor Arina Sabalenka have won this tournament. I don't think Jelena Rybakina has won it either. 2022, Jelena Ostapenko won it. She beat Veronika Kudermetova in the final. 2021, Garbiñe Muguruza beat Krejcikova. 2020, Simona Halep edged out Jelena Rybakina. Said that's the only time she's reached the final. Halep actually won it back in 2015 as well. Belinda Bencic, 2019 champion over Petra Kvitova, and Alina Svitolina, 2-time winner in 2017 and 2018. So, it's a good range of players, not necessarily the bigger hitters doing better in this tournament. And as far as court speed goes, it's pretty quick, actually. Last year's service hold percentage of 68.9. So only marginally slower than Miami and Cincinnati, which you'd certainly consider fast. Weather-wise, mid-20s Celsius all week, high 70s Fahrenheit. Actually gets up to 33 degrees Celsius on Friday. So that's into the 90s Fahrenheit. No Madison Keys, who's still recovering from a leg injury. Belinda Bencic is here after winning the 500 in Abu Dhabi. She didn't get a main draw wildcard for Qatar, so she's had the week off. Nigel, I mean, is there any sort of overarching sort of strategy here? Are you looking to oppose the usual suspects?
Well, you've gone through that. This is a tournament you usually get some shock winners. Paolini won it last year as an unseeded player. You've got to go back to 2020 to Simone Halep, to the last number one seed that's won this tournament. And players who are unseeded have done very, very well in this tournament. We do have 16 seeds. Oh, no, we have more than that, don't we? We have 32 seeds this time around. Is it 32?
No, 16. 16.
Oh,
But the top eight get buys into.
Yeah, sorry, I'm looking at
round
two. So 16 seeds, and usually, the number one seeds have done pretty fair. I have been here to this tournament for the last 2 years, actually, and it is quite quick. But this is the hottest I can remember, especially at the end of the week. I mean, the first day tomorrow on Sunday. Remember, this tournament starts on Sunday, so get your bets on with Bet Rivers and head across to the Bet Rivers app and the website quite early. It's going to be overcast tomorrow, a bit of rain around. It's going to be quite, the weather forecast I'm seeing, which you can never judge the weathercast you see, but they reckon it's a bit of rain around. But as the week goes on, as Rory said, it's going to get very, very hot, which will maybe change the conditions, because it's not usually in the 30s this time of year. It's usually sort of mid-20s, high 70s, but it might change. But I think we're going to go with what we know in here. But my take from last week is that there's two things you've got to look at the women's tour at the moment. We are led to believe that the top four players in the world are in this elite world, that they are just heads and shoulders above everyone. I'm talking about Sabalenka, Iga Swiatek, I'm talking about Rebecca, I'm talking about Coco Gauff. And the betting every tournament we get suggests that they are the girls to beat, and the others, they've really got little to no chance to win the tournament. This tournament has never been won by even them four players. They've got to the finals, Swiatek and Rebecca, but none of them has ever won this tournament. But is the gap between those top four and the next lot as big or as wide as the odds suggest? And that is the question you've got to ask yourself here. And there's two ways to look at it. Either the gap isn't as big as the odds suggest, or the top four are fairly inconsistent. And I would argue when we go into a major that, yes, those four are leaps and bounds above everyone, and they are, and especially in the men's game, when you play best of 5 sets, the best players usually win. But on the women's game, it's a best of 3 sets. But I question whether these four are that far above the next field. And last week has highlighted that with the losses some of these players will come when we break down the draw. We'll discuss that. But if you're looking at the top four in the betting here, Sabalenka's she's a favourite, Swiatek's a favourite, Coco Gauff third, and Rebecca, all single odds. And if we look at those four combined, what Bet Rivers are telling us is they're telling us that it's minus 700 that one of those four players will win this tournament. And judging by what I've seen last week, judging what I saw in Abu Dhabi, judging by some of the performances, Madison Keys just won the Australian Open. Is there really that much of a gulf between these top four? And do the players below them believe we can beat these players and get an 1,000 event? You saw it last year on Paolini. She got an 1,000 event. She won this, and it's sort of, she went on that incredible run in the majors, getting to 2 finals and a semi-final as well. So I'm looking at this now, and I'm thinking that last week we went with a favourite, and there was a valid reason to go one of the favourites because of her record, because of the conditions, because the fact that we believe that it was the wrong price, and she didn't win, but it was proven to be the wrong price. But I'm looking at this draw here, and I'm looking at these top four in the betting, and I think this week, if I was sitting in Bet Rivers headquarters as the head of tennis trading, I would be extremely happy every time. Well, I'm going to show my age here. The phone rang for somebody to place a bet. But when the bleep comes on the ticker and someone's betting Sabalenka or Swiatek or Gauff or Rebecca, I'll be quite happy to form a book around them, because I think minus 700, one of those four winning this tournament, is something that I want to oppose.
Yeah, we can go through the outright odds for Dubai now. Arena Sabalenka plus 333 heads the market. Iga Swiatek $4, Coco Gauff $6, Jelena Rybakina plus 750, and then it's $25 bar. Which, as you say, Nigel, as you say, talking about that big gulf between the big four and the rest in the betting. Belinda Bencic and Qinwen Zheng are $25. Jessica Pegula and Karolina Mukova, $28. Amanda Anisimova and Yelena Ostapenko, the finalists in Qatar, they're both $33. Ekaterina Alexandrova, Yasmin Paolini, Linda Noskova, Marketa Vondrousova, Mira Andreeva, and Ons Jabeur, all $40. Bigger prices the rest. I mean, what you were saying, I sort of get that. I think they're still the four best players, and I think they should be shorter than the rest. But I think it's almost just a matter of when you're looking beyond those top four, it could be anyone. It's so, it's just, you've got to catch them on the right week, and it's just so open. Yeah, there's value and there are big prices, but you could make a case for several of those players. And I mean, who'd have thought Ostapenko and Anisimova would reach the final this week just gone? Ostapenko in dismal form, Anisimova hadn't really shown a lot this season. Alexandrova had a great run beating Sabalenka and Pegula. Ons Jabeur, as you say, is a player returning to form. Marketa Vondrousova has shown a bit. Linda Noskova, I was impressed with, perhaps should have beaten Swiatek. So, there are a lot of players who you could make a case for. And if you get them at $40 or more, then happy days.
There's also a lot of players in the women's draw, I feel, that are just like standard players who are in there at sort of prices that you wouldn't bet. I mean, you wouldn't bet Jessica Pegula at 28-1. She's not a player that I would ever bet.
US Open finalist.
Yeah, but no, you would. I wouldn't bet her at 28-1. You got certain players that just sort of in there every week to just and I think there's a crop of players a bit below that bracket who are probably in a better shape to push the top ones than the Pegulas. The other thing has been, I follow a lot of these people on Instagram and socials and stuff like that, and I just watch. I look at Sabalenka on Instagram. I mean, all she ever does is shows where she's going for dinner with a new boyfriend. All she ever does is show her new dance moves. All she ever does is a bit like following Sean Calvert out in Delray Beach. All she ever does is show where she doesn't really show nothing about the tennis. And I just question whether that she really, really raises a game. I think to her, to sit in a nice hotel, to go out with a boyfriend, to go to see in the most Instagrammable place in Dubai is probably more important to her than the tennis. And then when she goes into the majors, she's a different animal. But I just got to think I'm not convinced of these four at the moment. And Rebecca is the one that I think that could potentially turn into something good in the season goes on. I think she's showing signs of improvement, but she's a bit way off her current levels. But Iga Swiatek obviously wants to win every time she goes to the court. You saw her reaction when she got beat by Ostapenko. She wasn't happy, but I'm not quite sure whether this is going to be her week given the conditions and the weather. But I just question him in these kind of tournaments. I like the Sabalenka we saw 2 years ago when she was wanting to be world number one and wanted to win, but now she's achieved it. I look at her and I think to myself, I think she's lost a bit of that desire.
I think that's a good point, because I think people can forget that tours in any sort of sport, and the two I'm thinking of are tennis and golf. They're hard work. They're a real grind. You're playing tournaments every week, every other week, and you're playing. And if you're at the top of your game, the top of the game, like your Sabalenkas, these big four, you're up against players who are, they want to beat you, and they're really determined, and they've got a lot riding on it. They've got ranking points. They want to get into that top 32, for instance, or the top 16, and get themselves in better positions for slams. And I think that's a fair comment, that you do wonder. We're getting into this big stretch now. We've got Dubai, we've got a little break, and then we're into the two tournaments in the States. We've got Indian Wells and Miami. And then suddenly you're not far away from, you've got the clay court season in Europe, and then it's the first major of the year. It could be that for some of these players, they're just looking at getting through it. What I would say about Swiatek, and which we alluded to, she's not playing all that well, and there's no. I think, as you've said, there's probably no question mark over her desire. Just a matter of her not being in the best of form.
Mm. But I do think there could be a case of Sabalenka, and I think even when she got knocked out last week in Qatar, it was just a non-stop picture fest of her and her partner going around Qatar, whereas a lot of people who put in that kind of performance would just give it up. And in Dubai, there's not a nice place to go and get some really nice Instagram pictures. So I think that might be a bit more important. And she's so far up the top of world number one. I made a mistake last week and thought Swiatek might be able to take her, but obviously I was putting right to that. But she's so far clear at world number one that she could have a good little holiday.
She could. Let's start looking at the draw. The quarterfinals, if they go according to the seedings, which of course is far from exact science, Arina Sabalenka would face Jessica Pegula. Coco Gauff would play Emma Navarro, who's horribly out of form at the moment. Reigning champion Jasmine Paolini should meet 6th seed Jelena Rybakina. And Iga Swiatek at the bottom would meet Qinwen Zheng, who had another early exit in Qatar. But there's all sorts of fun and games before then. Sabalenka will probably face her Doha conqueror, Ekaterina Alexandrova, in round 2. Qinwen Zheng will likely meet Ons Jabeur. Jabeur demolished her in Doha. And in round 2, Rybakina will probably play Ostapenko. That could be an interesting one. And Navarro is likely to come up against Belinda Bencic in round 2. And I dare say the Swiss would be favourite if that match came about. Looking at the draw, I thought the bottom half looked slightly the easier. The top quarter looks pretty fiendish to my eyes, Nigel.
I thought it was a pretty level draw, actually. I thought, Navarro not playing well. Gauff isn't playing well. It's very American heavy in the top half of the draw. The bottom half of the draw, I thought, got defending champion Paolini, got Rybakina and Swiatek, who's going to be pumped to get back. If we go through the bracket, I mean, Sabalenka, obviously, as you said, could play Alexandrova. I think she'll beat Alexandrova this time around because she had a tough week. She beat Pegula. She beat she beat Pegula, didn't she?
She did, yes.
She beat Pegula. She beat Sabalenka. She also beat Raducanu. Why didn't she do that at the US Open? Australian Open would have been in right good shape. So I think Sabalenka will probably come through that, but there's some dangerous opponents in there. Pegula, you've got Gauff, you've got Mukova, Kazatkina, Navarro, Bencic as well, who's unseeded, who will play Navarro in round 2. So it's a little bit of a difficult draw. As I've said all along, I'm looking for somebody to fade those kind of people in the top half of the draw. And the person that I have gone with this week is in the top half of the draw is Linda Noskova. And she is available at 40-1. And I think that's a big price. I mean, if you look at Noskova, she reached the semi-finals of Abu Dhabi. She had a very disappointing Australian Open getting beat in round 1. And then she didn't have a great week last week, losing in the round of 16. But she beat Putnetsaeva for the first time ever in her career. She beat her 6-2, 6-3, which is a very, very good win. And then she really, really, really pushed Iga Swiatek so close. I mean, she was favourite in play. She won the first set 7-6, and then she lost 6-4, 6-4 in the next 2 sets. And I think that given Sabalenka doesn't appear to be on it at the moment, I think Noskova here would be my bet. She'll play Schneider in round 2, who's not having the best of years. Then she'll play Pegula, who got beat by Alexandrova, and I've never been a huge fan of Jessica Pegula. And then an out-of-form Gauff, out-of-form Navarro, potentially a Kazatkina.
You've missed out a round. You've missed out a round because then she probably faces Sabalenka.
No, I'm sorry, but I was talking about the draw itself in terms of where she was. My negative is towards Sabalenka anyway, but then she will play Gauff or a Kazatkina in the sort of into the semi-finals. Yeah, but I just think that she's a player that's showing big signs of improvement. You mentioned earlier that there might be some motivation for players who want to get into the top 32 in the world. She's currently 34 in the world. She's not far off her highest ever ranking. 35 in the world. She wants to keep doing well. She's shown big signs of impunity. She's a huge talent, and I think at 40 to 1 in that top half of the draw. She's who I'm going to take for half a point each way. Purely and simply because I want to fade Sabalenka. I want to fade Gauff. I don't like Navarro. Wouldn't trust Kazatkina. Mukova's injury prone. Schneider's not playing at all well. Kanatskaya playing dreadful. And Kazatkina just is the most inconsistent tennis player of them all. So I think Noskova here at 40 to 1 would be my half a unit each way pick in the top half of the draw.
Yeah, I couldn't put you off there. I mean, for me, that top quarter looks really tricky, though, because you've got, as you mentioned, Sabalenka, Alexandrova, Clara Towson's in there. Hopefully she's recovered from whatever ailment she had in Qatar. She went out, retired after the first set against Elise Mertens. Mentioned Schneider and Pegula. The second quarter, to me, looks that bit easier. It's got Gauff and Navarro. You mentioned about it being American heavy. And Kazatkina. Mukova, as you say, injury prone. And she's up against Suzanne Lamens in round 1. And I saw Lamens today, and she was really impressive, the Dutch woman. She beat Shui Zhang, who's no mug in quicker conditions. And she beat her very, very easily. I'd quite fancy Lamens to beat Mukova in round 1. Sakkari didn't play badly against Iga Swiatek. She's in that quarter 2. But my pick for the tournament is in that second quarter, and I mentioned her a couple of times already. It's Belinda Bencic, who won in Abu Dhabi, beat Rybakina in Abu Dhabi, and I thought did so quite well. And obviously, she's coming back from her maternity break, but she looks in great form. She's a former winner here, and she comes here fresh because she didn't play in Qatar because she didn't get the wild card. I think she would have had to play in qualifying, but she went so far in Abu Dhabi winning the thing that she couldn't go to Doha, which is no bad thing. Her draw doesn't look too bad either. First up would be Emma Navarro, then probably Kazatkina, and then you're looking at Gauff, probably Gauff in the quarterfinals, and then the semi-finals we talked about is Sabalenka, Noskova, and all those lot. So Belinda Bencic, I really like. In the top half. That would be my pick. Moving to the bottom half, I actually think it's quite hard to see. She doesn't have a great record here. I mean, she has reached the final once, but I can't really find someone to beat Swiatek here unless Rybakina finds some form, Paolini perhaps, but I'm not seeing so many dangers in the bottom half.
Well, I'm going to go for a little bit of a wild one here in the bottom half. The draw. Rybakina obviously will play Ostapenko, which is a tough match. And you wouldn't really fancy Ostapenko, Rybakina to come through. I think it's a difficult match. You've got Badosa in there as well, who's playing well. Paolini, defending champion here. Zheng, who I think is a big fade. I want to be better. Andreeva, who's not playing at all well. And obviously you've got Iga Swiatek, but I'm going to go for someone at another big price. And it's a player that I believe, if you look at the data over the last few years, she's a player that is we have XG in the football, which sort of tells you how well a player's playing and their shots and their how good they're doing. And the data for this girl is out of a top 10 player, but she doesn't really win as many big games as she is the good. She's undoubtedly a very, very talented player, and it's the Ukrainian Marta Kostyuk. She's currently 50 to 1 with Bet Rivers. I'm going to go for her. She opens up her first round against Siniakova, which I think she'll get through. She'll play Donna Vekic or Sophie Kenning in the second round, and I think she's got the better of both of them. And then she'll run into Paolini. And I've said, after her year last year, Paolini is someone I think is going to, she's going to be someone who's going the backwards spiral. And, what we've seen so far this year, she hasn't been anywhere near the player who ended last season. So I'm not too really that bothered about that. You got Zheng, then, and then she'll play obviously Ostapenko or Rybakina, who gets through there. But you've also got Badosa. So there's a couple of real tough obstacles for those players that could go quite deep. And in these sort of 1,000 events where they're back-to-back matches, they might take out a lot out of them. Ons Jabeur is a player I quite like in that fourth quarter. I think she'll do okay. I think Swiatek will probably get through to get her, but I'm not quite sure whether. I just think Kostyuk at 50 to 1, keeping with his theme that I want to played 2 small plays and opposed the front in the betting. And the fact that she cost me so much money last week, Iga Swiatek, that I might trust her a little bit later on, but at the moment I'm going to go with it. And I couldn't bet her at 4-1 to win this tournament, where she's never won it, and she didn't play at all well last. If you watched her on the eye test, she was pretty poor last week. I couldn't bet her at 4-1 here when she was almost exactly the same price in the tournament. She won 3 times on the trot, and the conditions suited her perfectly. So when you compare the 2 prices, she's the most likely person to go through, but I'm not going to have it. So I'm going to go for Kostyuk here. She got through to the quarterfinals this week, got beat by Anisimova in the quarterfinal, the eventual champion, and she played well to get that far. And I'm just going to go with her at a big price to keep that theme of taking on players this week, or taking on the big ones at the big prices, and try to get someone home at a decent price each way, either in the top half or the bottom half of the draw. So yeah, for me, 2 small plays. I'm going to go for, in the top half of the draw, Noskova at 40-1, and the bottom half of the draw, Kostyuk, who you've got to remember as well. She in the quarterfinals here, she got beat by Anisimova. She should have beaten her. She lost the first set. She won the first set 6-4. She lost 7-5, 6-4. But she was very good, and on her data, she has so many chances to win these matches, but just doesn't win the big points. And potentially, she's a player that is a lot better than the current world ranking suggests. So 2 players on the fringe of women's tennis I'm going to go for. And I'm going to go for these youngsters to have a good week. So, yep, that's my picks.
Yeah, Kostyuk, of course, she beat Coco Gauff
in
Qatar, which is no mean feat. But as you say, gave Anisimova a real run for her money. Perhaps the toughest match that Anisimova had all week on her way to the title in Doha. I mean, I suppose for Kostyuk, Paolini in the, what would it be, 3rd round might be a tricky one. Even Donna Vekic in round 2, or Kenin, who's, I mean, and that's the thing though. So many of these players are capable on their day. It's just whether they produce. Or
you'd fancy her to beat both of them. You'd fancy.
You would, but Vekic from nowhere could pop up. Like Ostapenko did last week. Jabeur is interesting. I thought she did show good signs, and then ran into the Ostapenko Express. And if Jabeur gets through round 1, she'll play Qin Wenjing again, and she beat her comfortably last week. Jabeur plays Peyton Stearns in the first round. And I suppose, when looking at someone like, Anisimova, will she be able to keep it going? She's never been the most robust fitness-wise. So, this might come a bit quick for her. Ostapenko is so inconsistent from day to day, let alone week to week. It's tricky. No one really jumped out at me from the bottom half, I have to say. If Vondrousova, I thought was interesting. She's likely to face Mira Andreeva in round 2, which would be interesting. Or perhaps Elena Avanesian, who you could see pushing Andreeva close. But I think for me, I'm just going to stick with Bencic. It's very tricky at the moment. As you say, when you've got the top 4 make the market, but picking someone at a price, it's a bit of a lottery at the moment.
The market doesn't like Andreeva. That's the one thing I've noticed here. I mean, she's usually like the 5th clear favourite.
That's right. Yeah.
The market is very, very against Andreeva here. And her performances haven't been that great. We know she's a fantastic player, but she's up against Avanesian in the first round, then Vondrousova, the tough draw. But she would be starting these kind of talks at 20-1. So she was the one that everyone thought could break into that elite top 4. But now it's pretty much anybody. And but I genuinely believe that this is a tournament where to take on the front 4 at -700 if you're the book is a great play.
Absolutely. So let's just run through our picks quickly. My one, I'm going to have a point each way on Belinda Bencic at $25. And Nigel, you've got 2 plays, half a point each way?
Yeah, half a point into Linda Noskova in the top half of the draw at 40-1, half a point each way. And I'm going to go for Marta Kostyuk in the bottom half of the draw at 50-1. She's not on the graphic, but 50-1, just a half point each way on both of those.
So there you have it. That's what we make of Dubai. Conditions going to be fairly quick. but should give everyone pretty much a chance. You'd think they might be slightly against the likes of Swiatek, but who knows? With women's tennis at the moment, you just never know. Hopefully, the ATP's a bit more reliable, Nigel. How's that looking?
Well, not really. Not if you look. Not. Yeah, Yannick Sinner's out for 3 months now.
That's right.
We talk about that with myself and Sean. Whether you think that's fair, you don't think that's fair. But we've got a big tournament this week in Qatar, so we'll be discussing that. No Yannick Sinner. He won't be back until May. But back for the majors, which is what a nice way.
How convenient.
How you can negotiate your drug ban and get yourself back for the big money tournaments. Amazing, really.
Yeah, absolutely. So big. That's an ATP 1000, is it not, in Doha? Or is it just a 500?
500.
Just a 500. But bigger than the 3 250s you've had this week. So, yeah.
Double the size of them.
Yes, exactly. So, plenty to look for the ATP. We've got the Champions League on again, second legs of those playoffs.
Never stops, Rory. I never have a day off. I never stops. It's Champions League, Betting Weekly Live again next week, 4 o'clock local time in London and 11 o'clock Eastern time. Doing the Champions League, all the boys are back, and obviously I think it's a midweek Premier League slate as well this week as well. So I think it's Monday as well, Premier League as well. So the action coming thick and fast.
It is non-stop. We got it all covered: soccer, tennis, even a bit of alpine skiing. Nigel,
yeah, we've got a winner there. We've got a winner there. Can't believe it. I think Rory, do you know what my final parting thing to say to you? Quit while you're ahead. Don't be going back there. You've got your moment of glory. Leave it now. Leave it for one side.
Luckily, the World Championships are over for the alpine skiing. There won't be another of those for 2 years. So you're safe. You're safe. Thank you for joining us on Betting Weekly WTA, and join us again. I was going to say next week. Yes, it is next week. It won't be Saturday. I think it's going to be Sunday because we've got the tournament. If memory serves, we've got Merida in Mexico and Austin. And then after that, we're off to Indian Wells for the big 1000 for the start of the Sunshine Double. Hope you've enjoyed us. Leave your comments and your thoughts, your picks in Dubai in the comments, and we'll try and get back to you or get in touch with us on social media. Thanks again for joining us. We'll see you again next week.